Hello, welcome back to our Adobe Classroom in a Book tutorial series on Adobe Illustrator. We have arrived at lesson 3, Transforming Objects. In this lesson, we hope to look at moving, scaling, rotating objects using a variety of methods. We'll also reflect, shear, and distort them, adjusting the perspective of an object to applying effects and filters, position objects precisely, and then repeat transformations quickly and easily, and have a look at some other things there. What you'll see in lesson 3 is also some typical business design materials. So you see a letterhead, an envelope, and a business card. Notice that there's some common design elements with them, and that's one of the things that helps promote your identity and your brand as a business, some common design features. This one is about surfboards and palm trees and oceans, and you can kind of see that theme that's running through this. So let's get started. I'm going to close this one here. I've already opened the start file. And there we are. We're going to begin our work with the letterhead. See if I can move my toolbars around a little bit here just to get organized, so we can see what's going on. And there's a couple things that we need to set up as we begin our work. So, first comment, this from step 5 on page 80, that this is a lesson for running the actual manipulating objects and not really creating objects. So this thing has its rulers set up for us. It's got custom swatches sitting in here waiting for us. It has some guidelines built into it for us already. And normally you would actually start with a blank document. The other thing that we need to do in here as we start with this is we need to save this thing, and then we need to set some preferences for this particular document. So I'm going to save as suggested on step 6 on page 80, and then we can get going. So I'm going to throw it on my drive, same as you should throw it on your drive, your storage facility. And I'm going to put it in Adobe here, and we're going to save it as letterhead. And I'll just say I'm going to replace it because I've played with this before. And OK. And let's carry on with page 81 and step 1. We're supposed to go to Edit. We're supposed to go to Preferences and General tab. In the General tab, we need to make sure that Scale, Strokes, and Effects are selected. Normally, when you double the size of an object in Illustrator, it will increase the size of the object, but it won't necessarily increase the width of the path or the stroke on the object. If we put in that check mark, then when we double the size of the object, then also the size of the object's edges will also, or lines on the object will also double, as well as whatever pattern is inside of it. If you don't set that up, then you might also notice that your pattern will tile in an object rather than grow at the same size as the object. There's some things to think about. All right, so we're at your selection tool, and we're going to click this thing, and we have a bounding box. We're going to grab the corner of the bounding box, and I'm going to hold shift so I maintain the dimensions, and I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to let it go to the blue guide here. Next step is to fill the inside of this thing here. So I'm going to use the fill tool here. Now I'm going to go over to my swatches box. I happen to scroll down on the bottom, and I know my logo background is sitting here, so I'll apply that swatch. And then we're going to go to Object, and we're going to go to Lock and Selection. And that way we can work on the back of this thing without actually disturbing it or breaking it apart when we accidentally click something that we shouldn't click perhaps. And then we're going to go in our layers palette in the bottom corner here, and if you don't have it, you can go window and layers and make sure there's a checkbox in front of it. There's my layers palette. We want to be turning on the text guides layer. And we're on the selection tool. We're going to pick this text stuff, and we're going to pull it down so that it sits, and the B is supposed to be on the intersection, the bottom of that corner. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hit Z and just zoom in on that for a sec. And I'm going to use the arrow keys just to tweak the B right over the bottom corner there. Then I'm going to hold Control and hit 0 to zoom back out again. And there we have that positioned. And now we're going to go to the transform palette. I have mine sitting on the bottom here. You could go to window and transform, make sure there's a checkbox there, and it will come up for you. And notice that this object is represented by the corners on the bounding box as you come around, but also an inside here. And if here you look in here, that's where you can set the reference point for this particular object. And step number 11 wants us to click on the bottom left corner to set the reference point or the anchor point for this object, so when we scale it, it will grow to the top right. And when we transform this thing, we want to set this thing so that it is 290 points. So I'm going to type 290 point PT and hit enter, and I forgot to hit the chain constraint, so let's do that over again. We're going to click constrain those, and I'll try that again, 290 point, and there we have it. And by the way, when you click this chain, it causes the Illustrator to maintain the dimensional integrity of the object so it doesn't stretch. So we're going to go to the icon on the left, and we're going to turn off the visibility of the text layer. We are going to click on the text guides layer to turn that one off. We are going to click on the palm tree guides to bring them up. And we're going to grab the selection tool, the palm tree, and we're going to bring this palm tree down so that it's sitting over here like that. In our next step, we're going to scale this thing. And in this case, we're going to scale it from the intersection here, not actually on a corner of this box. So we're going to click the scale tool. We're going to hold Alt, and we're going to set it at the intersection and click there, so that sets a reference point for our scaling. And if you wish, you can preview. And on the uniform scale side, we're going to type in 175 and either hit enter or click OK. Notice the palm tree has run out of the box a little bit. That's okay, because we're going to rotate it on our next step on page 85, step number 1. So eventually we'll rotate it, but we'll just demonstrate something here for a minute. So if I use my rotate tool now, I remember this thing, its origin or whatever, its anchor point has been fixed at that intersection. And if I click and I rotate this thing around, it rotates around that point. I'm just going to drop it there because I'm going to undo this. And we'll do this a little more systematically. You can see what setting a fixed or an anchor point does for an object. So we have our palm tree still selected. And turning the page to 86, we've rotated it already. Now we're going to click Alt. And we're going to click on this thing here because we still have a rotate happening. When we click on this anchor point now, it's going to bring up our dialog box, and it'll allow us to numerically change it. And there we have our palm rotated here. I think at this point here, I should probably use the arrow key. I'm just going to nudge it down a little bit so that it's off the stroke of my circle. Yeah, it's a touch far. Try and get it somewhat symmetric in there. So now we're at the point where we could say Control S for save. It's probably a good idea to do that once in a while. And we're on page 87, reflecting objects. The reflect tool is buried underneath the rotate tool. So if I click and drag, there it is. My palm tree is selected. I'm going to alt click to select an anchor point here. And I'm going to reflect it vertically. As you can see what's happening here, there's my preview. But instead of hitting OK in this case, I want to hit copy so that then I get two palm trees to work with. And there we have them. The second palm tree is the one that is selected automatically. To double click the scale tool, we'll bring up the dialog box that allows us to work with it. It always keeps its old ones. When we don't want it bigger, in this case we want it smaller. So I am going to scale it by 70% as suggested in the uniform box here. And then I am going to rotate this thing. So we'll switch the rotate tool and we'll double click it. And we want -45. And then I'm going to use my selection tool. And I'm going to bring this thing in over here so it slightly overlaps and touches. And then we have the combination sitting there. We can Control S to save it. We can turn off our palm tree guides. We can go to Object Unlock All. And now it wants us to go Select All. Sometimes I prefer just to use the selection tool and draw a box around what I hope to select. As long as it's contained within the box, that will select it. So then on page 89, we have Object and Group. And that's step number 11. So they're all together as a group now. We can double click the scale tool and we can set it down to 30 and go OK. Notice also that our copy is still an option in there. And we want to turn on the guides for our text, I believe, so that we can bring, and somehow we missed or lost our text here. So we should have that open. Let's redo our selection tool here, because that text in here is supposed to be together with it too. So we'll just add that to our group, and let's transform that again. And we're looking to go down to 30 and go OK. And then we can take that selection and we can pull it up into the upper left corner here. And I'll use the arrow key here to nudge. And we can turn on the address. Control S to save. And that brings us to the point where we want to build the flowers for the bottom right hand corner of our letterhead. So we're going to be using some filters and effects. And your textbook here notes that distortion can be applied two ways. Applying anything as a filter applies it permanently, so you can't really undo that. Applying it as an effect allows you to change the object, and the effect will automatically update the original shape. So as you change the original shape, then whatever the effect is applied on will actually change too. If you do as a filter, what you see is what you get. So step 1 on page 90, grab the star tool. There's my info area. You can see the position here and you can see size. I'm looking to drag in a star that's about 150 pixels wide. Doesn't really matter about the orientation at this point. So there we go, 150 by about 150. If I had held the shift, it would have done it proportionally, but things in nature are very, very, very rarely 100% symmetrical, so a little wee bit off probably makes it look better. And we want to fill this star with our, not logo background, but with our flower gradient. Leave the stroke set to none. And we're going to go filter. We're going to distort. We're going to go twist. And our twist angle is going to be 45, and hit enter to apply it. Make sure my attributes window is open. So I'm going to go File, Attributes. I want to see the center of this object, so I'll turn that button on. So we're using the star tool again. I'm going to click in the center to start my star. I'll pull it out. I want to turn it as I'm pulling it out so that things kind of fit in between. And I want one that's about, again, 150 points wide. Let it go. And we'll turn on the Show Center button again. That's step 6. Step 7, shift-click on the fill box of the control palette. Shift-click on the fill box. We can go in the color now, and we can click the white part of the color, and it will fill it with white. We don't have to try and find the white swatch inside our swatches palette here that way. We'll take the star now, and we're going to use an effect this time. We are going to be using the effect on the stroke. So we're going to click the stroke box. We're going to click color and swatches, and we want the crimson color. And then we're going to go to Effect, Distort, Transform, Effect, Distort and Transform, Pucker and Bloat. And we want to bring it up to 50. So that's sitting at the top of page 92. Step 10. OK. And Control S to save. If you wanted to, we could have moved that pucker and bloat dialog and pushed it off. So click the preview so we could see what was happening. So our next step is to shear this object, make it a little less perfect, or shear an object. We're going to go with the ellipse tool. I'm going to build it off the center of this, and I'm going to have to hold Alt to make that happen. Just pull in a nice ellipse, and in this case we don't want a stroke, so we are going to pick none for stroke. We can bring our fill to the foreground. We're going to fill it with orange. And then we are going to select all 3 parts of the flower. So you can shift click, or you can draw a box. We're going to group them together. And in the transform palette, you have rotate, but you also have shear. We'll look for 10 here, hit enter. And we're going to take our width of this particular object, and we're going to set it as 0.25 inches. And that finishes step 7 on 93. Over to step 8, we're going to take our flower and drop it on the bottom right hand corner. Going to hold Alt and drag and drop, and again. And I'd like to take this object here, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. This object here, I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit so that they don't look exactly the same. Perhaps I'll turn it just a tiny bit too, so we don't have 3 objects that are sitting on top of each other that are virtually, they're very close to identical, but at least a little bit of change to them. It makes it look a little bit better. And we'll go Control S to save. And now we're at the point of the end of page 94. So we've got the letterhead completed. So we've reached the point where we're going to begin work on our envelope. So I'm looking at page 95. double click the hand tool to fit our letterhead inside the window so you can see it all. See if I can move some of my toolbars out of the way a little bit. And I am going to be looking to pick my logo area here. Control and C for copy or edit copy. Let's just follow the book edit copy. And then step 4, file open. We're looking for lesson 3. This PC, U drive, Adobe CIB, Illustrator, lessons 3, to start. So L3 to start 2, open. There's our envelope. And we can save this one. File save as. Back on my H drive. And that should be envelope. Save it. Step 6, Control V or edit paste. Alright. Transform has X and Y coordinates of the bottom left dot. We want to be working off the top left. We want our X coordinate to be 0.25. We want our Y coordinate to be minus 0.25. We're going to use the shift key and we're going to drag the bottom right corner of the bounding box to scale the logo and make it fit within this blue line. So control there and in it goes. Using the group selection tool, we want the word stick. So if we double click it, not triple click it, we'll get it. Hold down the Alt key and drag down slightly to the right. So we copy the text, let it go. Scale tool. Alt click the left side of the text. 300 and enter. Below the scale tool there's a free transform tool. We'll activate that tool. Double-headed cursor over the bottom right corner. We're going to click and drag the bottom right corner handle. And while dragging, we're going to press Shift, Alt, and Control and drag downwards. So we're going to click, Shift, Alt, Control, and now we're going to drag downwards. And you can see that that starts to distort or pop the back end of that thing open. And when you're happy, you let go of the mouse, and then you let go of the Shift Alt Control. We're going to go to Window, Opacity or Transparency. We have that one open there. If you don't have it, you go Window, Transparency. We want to set your opacity to 20. And function is normal. And we're going to select, deselect, and Control S for saving. In the next section here, we'll be working with the business card. And notice that we'll also be using elements from our business or logo through the rest of the documents here. So let's open our start file again. And this time we're looking for lesson 3, start 3 on the U drive. Adobe CIB, Illustrator Lessons, lesson 3, start 3, and open it. And there is a business card sitting here, and you notice that there's more than one, because when you go to Staples or something, you can buy business card templates that you can print on, and they have multiple cards in that template, so it'll run through a printer. Let's save this one as suggested. File save as. Back on our H drives. And we'll call this one Bus Cards. AI, save it, and OK. And we could zoom in with the Windows Navigator button. Let's have a look at that. You want about 200. Drag this over top. Could have also hit Z on the keyboard, drawn around it. We're at the point where we're going to use a selection tool, and we're going to click the palm trees. We're going to alt drag them, so that'll bring them out as a copy. And I believe we are supposed to drop them in behind the text here. And it says on the bottom of page 99, we're going to use a free transform tool to scale, distort, and rotate the palm trees and apply a lighter color. So we want to make them look a little bit different. So we've got the palm tree selected. There's a free transform tool turned on. We're going to hold down Shift and Alt, and we're going to drag the bottom right corner down. So Shift and Alt, bottom right hand corner gets dragged down so it gets bigger. And you can see that it scales it proportionately then. Now we're going to grab the bottom right corner and we're going to begin dragging. We're going to hold down the Control key. And we're going to bring it up a little bit. I don't know how far we want to go. Maybe just so it's sitting in like this. And then we're going to be outside. Step number 7. Rotate. Stand those trees up a little bit. We're going to send the palm trees to the back. So Object, Arrange, send to back. So they'll be behind the text now. And we're going to find the tan swatch in here somewhere. So we're going to have to look in our swatches here somewhere. Perhaps click our background or hit enter to transform or something. Let's see if we can get our tan swatch to happen. That'll let us pick a color. But it doesn't seem to want us to pick a swatch. So let's forget about that one for half a sec. We can pick the logo background here and it'll let us do that. Oh, there's the tan swatch sitting right there. I'm blind. Okay, I was assuming that we had the same swatches palette as we used to have, and we don't. So there we go. Got the tan swatch happening. And with the palm tree still selected, we're going to go filter. We're going to distort and free distort. We are going to grab one of the handles. You need to use the tip of the arrow key to make this happen. You can push it up. Over. You can do whatever you want with it basically. When you got something you think you like, you can click OK. I think I pushed that over a little far. So let's bring that over. And to click outside the artwork to deselect it, and there we have some palm trees that kind of match the logo sitting in behind the text. Maybe we should just bring them over just a touch here. Select. So we want to double click the hand tool now so you can see it all. Select all. We're going to go Object, Transform, Each. Now we'll move a copy of the selected objects down 2 inches from the original object. So we want, in the Move Vertical field, we want -2. And we're going to click Copy. And I think you'll notice we get another box down here. Object, Transform, again. Control D is a shortcut to make that happen. And now we have 5. Control A. Object, Transform, Each. Take the vertical back down to 0. In the horizontal, 3.25. These business cards are 2 inches by 3.5 inches. 3.5. And we want to copy. And we could go Control S to save. And it's probably a good idea just to click off it and then save it, so you don't save with selected work. And then if we want to see how this really works, go View. We can take our guides and we can hide them. And then we could close the various palettes, boxes, whatever you wanted to. And you can see your finished business card sheet. And that essentially brings us to the back end of lesson 3. You have an opportunity to play with your own stuff there if you like. I suggest that might not be a bad idea. And I'm going to save this document, and I'm done then with instructing you or helping you work your way through lesson 3. Thank you for watching. Look forward to sharing lesson 4 with you. We'll choose our file location, click choose, this PC, and back to our H drives or wherever you've been putting your stuff. And 3 there, click OK, and click OK. And it should say that we're writing the EPS format. And then you can see it repeats. And then eventually it will be done. And then we could go File Open. And you can see that we've got business cards for Ann O'Connor, Connor Lane, Smith, etc. Thanks again for watching. See you in lesson 5. Let's continue lesson 3 for a minute. Page 104. The situation is you obviously have more than one employee that needs a business card. What do you do with that? Well, it asks us to reopen that L3 start file that we had, and we're supposed to save this file as business cards 2. So I'll get that going, and then we can get at this work. Basically, the intent here is to almost create a template and work with it that way. So I'll save it business cards 2 and OK. We want to zoom in on our card in the top here, so do that. Except that's a little bit big, so I'm going to take us out in the navigator a little bit so that I can actually see my text here, which is mostly of what I wish to see. Because this part of the business card, the logo is going to stay the same. So we're at step 4 on page 105, window, variables. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to be setting up names and addresses as variables or states so that we can automatically save a set of files so that we can automatically generate business cards for different people. So our selection tool, pick our name. Over in the bottom left corner, make text dynamic. Step 7, double click the name. Name underscore title. OK, because it's already a text string as it points out there. It talks a little bit more about the types of variables you can set. Step 8, still selected. In the variables palette, click the capture data button, and that'll basically write John Smith into a data set number 1 as a name title, and should also write this. Step 10, page 107, use the text tool. First of all, pick the name, type in Maggie Riley, and then pick the description, and we're going to type in sales. Dataset 1's been altered, so it indicates that because it's italicized now. Step 12, capture data set. Started up as dataset 2 now. So it says in 12, creating variables is a 2-step process. You define the variable, then you bind it to an object, and you can work with it there. The type of object and type of variable determine what attributes the object can change. You can bind visibility variable to any object to make the object state a visibility dynamic. If the object is text, a linked image, or a graph, you can make the object's content dynamic. Step 13, to create another variable for the address. We're going to click in the blank area, so we got nothing selected. Selection tool, click the address text, make the text dynamic. Variable 1 appears, double click it, address is fine, OK. Use the type tool, the telephone number is going to get changed, same business, and they use 6789 or 5678, whichever. And the email should also change from Smith to M. Riley. Step 17, page 108, capture data set. Step 18, to view the data, there's a set of controls here. You can see that there's John Smith with his information. There's a mix between John Smith and Maggie Riley. There's Maggie Riley with her proper information. And it wants us in step 19 to be set on data set 2, to go up to the options arrow on the in this palette, and to delete data set 2. So now we have data set 1 and data set 3, which are valid, and we can go Control S to save. Next step, up in the top corner, we want to load a variable library, and this is where someone has done a bunch of work for us already. This PC, we're going to go to the U drive, Adobe CIB, Illustrator Lessons 3. We're looking for the data.xml file. And click open and overwrite the variables. And you can see in here that we've got John Smith. There's Megan Riley back. And they've actually named the dataset variables here. Window, actions as per step 3 on page 109. Over the page, step 4. So let's go find our actions window. There it is. Up in the options menu, we want a new action. The set, we are going to call save as EPS. Leave the other things okay. And click record. We're going to go File, Save As. Instead of AI, we want Illustrator EPS. We're going to click Save. OK. And when that finishes, we're going to hit the stop playing recording. From the actions menu, we want batch. We'll leave this alone. We'll leave this alone. We want our source to be our data sets. We'll override action save commands as output there, File and Data Set, and we'll click OK. And I need to choose a destination folder, which should be on my U drive. And it's not letting me do that. And we'd do that later on then. And then we should be able to click OK and let it go. Thanks for watching, and see you in lesson 4.